So, good morning. Welcome everyone. Great to have you in the sessions. A couple more just coming in now. Great to see some new faces, of course, and some familiar faces. Hello to Pia. Hello to Dan, Jody, Harriet, hello. And Simon as well. So a few of us in here today, which is great. Also see the cameras on. Thank you for that. If there's anything I can do to encourage anyone else to put their camera on, I'll do so, but whatever you feel comfortable with is fine with us too. So for those who we haven't met and haven't met Tonic before, we're Tonic. We are a business consultancy. We specialize in the agency sector. And essentially help owners, their teams, their businesses to realize their full potential and value, whatever that may entail. We've been running Tonic Talks for a number of years now, and today's virtual session is all about what it will take to be successful in this new world that, of course, we all find ourselves in. So we'll hopefully share some clarity on some of that. In terms of from the team at Tonic today, you will hear mainly from me and my partner, Ian. Both of us have, there he is, both of us have worked in agencies and led agencies for many years, but importantly, we've also been a partner to agencies for many more, and that is true of the whole team at Tonic. We've been in the thick of it for the last few months, like all of you, and we were happy to share some of those experiences within the realms of confidentiality, of course, and also to hear from you, hopefully, at the end of this session as well. It's also about sharing some new thinking, some work that we've been doing on the new standards for agency success, and what it will really take to win in the future. So we're scheduled for an hour today. We will respect that. We will stick to time. If anyone wants to continue talking to us afterwards, we will stay on the line and also can pick up that conversation at a later date. How it will work, I will and Ian will share for about 40 minutes, and then we will leave plenty of time for questions and discussion at the end. Thank you very much for those who have shared questions in advance. That's great. Also, please make good use of the chat box, and I will also prompt people at the end of the session for any questions, burning questions that have come up as well. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. So lots of talk about the new normal and re-everything, reset, reimagine, reinvent. And the truth of the matter is, we believe, that change is actually long overdue for the agency sector and will be more fundamental than just a tweak to the way things are now. Industry practices, agency practices, been broken for some time, actually. And I think in terms of being complicated, being fairly rigid, being expensive, and also for some quite predictable as well. And it really is about the effect of that has been for some time client connections weakening, employee commitment waning, and actually importantly profitability shrinking, which we've been seeing for some time as well. Now, I'm not suggesting everybody on this call has experienced that equally, but I think whichever camp you're in, and certainly if you're in the camp I've just described, it's time to be bold. And if you have managed to stay ahead of all of that, it's going to be a case that you want to keep going, of course, and remain successful. So wherever you stand on the issue, I think this is a chance for our sector and for agencies to start as you mean to go on, and to move to a better working model, one that is better, more essential, more valuable for everyone involved. And that's what we're really here to talk about today. And I think, as otherwise said, or as we otherwise say, the future is not what it used to be. And I think this will have a really big effect on the way that agencies are run. And we believe that's a positive thing. And there are a lot of opportunities to be gained. So I'm just going to jump to a screen. There's only a few slides here, but just to kind of illustrate some of the thinking that we've been putting together. So, and, you know, I can share that with you in a clear way. So, first thing to say is future positive, average won't count. Tolerance thresholds are much lower, but standards are also much higher. And when we think about that from a client perspective, obviously all of our clients are under a lot of pressure. They're looking for smarter ways to get things done, get things to market. They're, of course, still looking for better ROI. And through this process, actually, I've been exposed to, no doubt, a lot of different ways of doing things, and potentially different partners too, which is new competition for you. And of course, we're dealing with a situation that is more competitive than ever going forward. So the scrutiny on not just what you do as agencies, but what you can add, the value that you can add and the difference you can make will be more and more. In terms of employees, it's also the case that, of course, employees are looking for progression, and the best employees have really sort of shown themselves and demonstrated what flexibility and choice can really bring out of them, but what it can really deliver in terms of performance as well. And they'll want to, I guess, in some ways have already been doing, reprioritizing and reevaluating, what matters to them, both in terms of their working life and also their home life too. For owners, of course, wanting to work performance hard, I'm sure all of you are, making up for lost time, but also having the means in the future to adapt, to manage disruption in an easier way and a better way going forward. In terms of investors, though, and partners, it's really important to, what they're looking for, of course, is reassurance. Attitudes to risks have changed. And it's important that confidence and reinsurance is there, and sort of the capacity, good growth potential, the capacity to grow will become really important. So I guess daunting or exciting to some of you potentially, the benefits for those who act will be clear. And, the chances are already all of you have been through quite a lot of already, whether it's furloughing your staff, bringing them back, managing costs, managing well-being, and here we are sharing lots more things to think about. So we have been doing our own thinking over the last few months, and informed by the work that we've been doing with our clients, we've spent some time putting together a framework for looking at and managing this change that's required. So I'll just introduce that now, but it's really about bringing simplicity to something which is quite complicated. When we imagine looking at a new world and your agency as a new world, and we break that down, there are some fundamental areas that will drive success in the future. Obviously, clients, earning and growing commitment from your current clients, but also for those who are lucky enough to be winning business still, but will be obviously focused on winning more business in the future. How you earn and grow that commitment will become important. Focusing on talent, of course, inspiring and empowering your talent, making sure that they have the systems that they need, the support that they need, are empowered in the right way. And of course, value, creating and managing the value of your business. And all of these areas can't be looked at in isolation. They're of course connected. They need to be looked at in a joined up way, because who you choose to work with, how you choose to work with them, obviously has a direct effect on who you hire, who you keep, how you structure your teams, and of course, how profitable you can possibly be. So this system exists now, but when we think about it in the future, there are going to be new standards that are going to come into this. And so what? There's a framework. It broadly makes sense. It brings some simplicity to the way you think about things. But what about the benchmark for all of these things? Because as I've said at the beginning, it's not just about how we were doing. The benchmark is not even about how your agency is doing now. It's about what it's going to take to win in the future. And the success factors, or the factors that are going to drive success, have changed. There is we believe, a level of excellence now required. We call this mastery. We believe there's a degree of realness that needs to come through across the business. We call this authenticity. Of course, a built-in capacity to adapt, but also be stable, and we call this resilience. And The potential to achieve more through collaboration, a smart collaboration, is only going to increase, and we call this community. So these are new success factors. These should show up across everything you do, and Ian will come on to talk about that in real terms, real examples in all of these areas as to where we see the difference, the real differences coming through. But ultimately, you know, if it's about exceptional quality, that's top talent, skills, capabilities. That's about being essential in everything you do. If it's about authenticity, you know, real, reliable, responsible, yes, but what does that mean? Lead by example, be upfront, focus on win-win relationships. Resilience, building confidence, of course, but have the capacity to flex. And community, which we've all seen, you know, in all walks of life, in all society. Community evidence today, we're all here, we're all sort of talking together and listening together. But this sort of collective power, this, if you like, connected brilliance that will come across your companies, whether that be within teams, whether that be across networks, connected brilliance, but also the supportive systems, the systems that people are going to need, whether they be technical or whether they be emotional or other. So really bringing these things together is thinking about the new world, those new expectations and these new standards that are going to be expected from your clients, from your talent, and in terms of how you run and build your business in the future. I'm just going to hand over to Ian now, sort of break each one of those down and give you a practical sense of some of the differences that we're going to talk about. Ian, you're up.
Okay, thank you. That's useful session, I think, for all of you, just to give you a framework for thinking. But I've always found that the most difficult bit is not necessarily the theory or the approach, but what do you actually do in practice? And certainly in times when I've led agencies through difficult challenges, economic downturns, restructurings, different changes in the past, it's always been good practical advice that's been the stuff that's most valuable. And certainly, you know, there's lots of papers out there, there's lots of words out there about, you know, what the world's going to be like in the future. But our commitment in doing this focus on the future was to try to make it easy, practical, workable. And certainly in the next 20 minutes or so, I'll talk you through not just our interpretation of some of those practices, some tools and techniques, some things you can use, but I'll also share some experiences of our work with clients currently, where we're on that journey of going from perhaps the old to the new and working out, you know, how to deal with all that. So we're trying to be open with things, and certainly to the extent that confidentiality allows us, either you know, when we come to questions, or if you want to talk to us afterwards about any sort of practical tips or experiences or things that we can share with you about what's going on out there, then we'd be delighted to do so. So let's sort of start to think about moving into this. And one of the things that Liana talked about was just I think trying to make things easy, practical. That doesn't mean they're easy to do, but enabling you to get your minds around what needs to be done, because there is an awful lot of things to consider at this stage. So, you know, it's very easy for you to I think focus on a couple of things that says, okay, well, we've cut costs here, we've cut a couple of people there, or we've you know, we've restructured our processes here and there. But unless you think about things in a holistic way, you won't really get to a good position. You might improve your status in the short term, you might improve your results, you might get better staff retention. But if you don't look at this whole thing on a holistic basis, we don't think that you will get to be a winning agency. You might get to be a surviving one, and you might even get to being sort of how you were before. But as we say to many of our clients, getting back to how you were before isn't necessarily great. And for many people, how they were before, in recent times, they've forgotten a bit about how stressful, how difficult it was, how demanding it was. And this is an opportunity to take a significant step forward. The old words of "don't waste the crisis" is exactly true with the work that we're going to talk to you about at the moment. And even though it can be a bit daunting, I had a conversation with a client about 2 weeks ago where we're just starting on this process with them, and the chairman looked at me and she said, it's quite a challenge. It's going to be quite a challenge to get through all this. But then in the next phrase, he said, well, at least we've got a framework, we've got a process, we understand what needs to be done, and we have a way to prioritize what's going on. So at least we hope that you can take some of that benefit from the things we're going to share with you today. So let me share a couple of slides, and then we'll head on into the next part of the process. Let's get to there. Okay, coming back to those three areas, and even those three areas themselves are a very useful way to guide your thinking. And I think those of you who've worked with Tonic in some shape before, you'll know that we're very practical, and we like to make things as easy as possible in terms of understanding what our agency clients are trying to do. So those three areas are a good starting point. And what we're going to try and do in the next few minutes is unpack some of those, understand what's going on within each of those areas, and give you some guidance as to how to find your way through them. Log that point at the beginning that we need to look at all three, because otherwise it's not going to work for you. You may get a bit better, but you won't make the leap that you need to make in order to be in a really strong position for the future. So let's have a look at each of these three areas in turn, and then we can see where that takes us to. Excuse me. So clients, so earning, growing client commitment, whether that's winning new clients or keeping your old ones, growing relationships, developing business, a range of different things to be thought about here. And we're going to try and look at what the standards are. What will you need to do to meet the higher expectations that Leanna's outlined, that we know are going to be different for you in the future? Excuse me. So just as a quick dip and a quick reminder of those expectations, if we take on the left-hand side of this slide. So what are those clients going to expect? Well, in simple terms, they're going to expect you to be genuine and brilliant. There's no average delivery, no half-hearted thoughts. They're really going to expect you to be top class. The experiences over the last few months will have raised the bar, and that will set new standards. And we just put the word there, nothing superfluous, because clients have been educated over the last 3 or 4 months, and I'm sure all of you have been doing work for clients in record time, in the simplest way, and the sort of one of the problems of that is that those standards that we've achieved in the past few months will now become normal standards for the future. And also with much more interaction, personal conversations, then there's going to be a driver for the agencies of choice to be like-minded, not just like-minded in terms of objectives or processes or way of thinking about brands or communication, but like-minded in spirit and attitude as well. So the bar has moved. How do you respond to that? And in your thinking about that, there's an invitation for you to think the same way that we do, is again to break your thinking about client area down into 3 areas. So we've looked at those 3 there: offering, delivery, targeting, selection, and positioning, communication, as being 3 groupings that make this whole client area easier to consider. You don't have to follow those exactly, but if you want to do that on your own or with any help from us, then you're very welcome to use these prompts to help you to get into a reasonable place. But what does it mean? Well, what do we see the expectations driving you to need to achieve in the future? What are the standards you're going to have to meet? So let's work through a few of these, and we'll give you a few examples and try and put a bit more detail on the theory. So sorry, come back. So just in terms of your offer and delivery, very simple words there, high standards joined up and impactful. But let's again unpick those as well. So as we said, clients are going to be looking for genuine, brilliant work. They're going to be looking for real specialists in terms of the work that is done by agencies. So if you can't deliver high standards, or you've got certain offers or certain services or certain products that you know are average, or dare I say it, less than average, then really consider what you're going to do about them. Maybe you should drop them completely. Maybe you should rethink how you deliver them. Maybe you need to change your teams, add to your teams. Maybe you need to outsource those. Maybe you need to find partners. But whatever you have in your offers, make sure they really are of the highest standards, or else don't do it, in simple terms. And the joined up word is really, again, playing to this specialization. Clients are going to want people who really genuinely know what they're doing in the area that they profess to be experts. And so make sure that if you do have a range of services or a range of products that are broken down within your overall offer, make sure that they're joined up, make sure that they make sense. So don't have random lists of services sitting on your website or LinkedIn site that are just things that you can do on a rainy day if you're not doing what you're really good at. So make sure that the services and the offer that you have in place makes real sense to clients when they look at it. And also make sure that whatever you do, you can deliver significant impact from what you do. That's what clients are going to be looking for. It's not process they're going to be looking for, they're going to be looking for impact. And you need to be sure that whatever you do, you can deliver it well. And then also, if we talk about processes and ways of working, faster, leaner, more collaborative. That's just an obvious response to nothing superfluous. So, and we all know that there are, in most agency processes, things that don't necessarily add value, or don't necessarily add value in the sharpest way. And rather than waiting for the clients to catch you out on those things, take the lead. Edit your processes, refine them, think about what's really necessary, and really look at focusing on the end result and getting to a good place. And of course, within that, the impact of being faster, leaner is going to be an impact on fee income, on revenue levels, on pricing. If you're not traveling to see clients, you're not spending days with them, just on a simple practical level, clients are going to expect you to be charging less. And the whole pricing issue is again an area of much discussion at the moment. We don't think there's big moves to be huge sharing of results or profit results sharing or that type of approach at the moment, but there is a move to much more collaborative costing and much more collaboration in looking at how the work's done, how much is charged for it, what should happen there. And so openness and fairness in your processes and your pricing is pretty fundamental start for going forward. The next area to look at is targeting, and it's an area which I think has been given very little attention by agencies in the past. Most agencies have tended to think of targeting as an exercise of deciding where they could possibly get work from, rather than some real tight thinking on who are the exact clients that are best for us. Where do we play to our strengths? Where can we deliver something special? And in all the work that we're doing at the moment, this targeting section is becoming perhaps one of the most significant pieces of work in reshaping agencies for the future. So really think about where is a really close match between what we know we can do really well and clients that know and need that, and it's really important to them as well. And don't just think it's these three sectors will go after there. Think much deeper than that and look to where there's not only just a good match on expertise, but there's a good match on culture. And also, we need to make sure there's a really good match on profitability and the opportunity for longevity of relationship. So don't necessarily think that we'll win this client by lowering our price and it doesn't matter because we'll buy our way in the first 3 months, we won't get the price, and then we'll put our prices up. That was always the wrong thing to do in the past, but it will be, more importantly, the wrong thing to do in the future, because client expectations are that they will hold those prices and keep things really tight. And also, I think you just need to be really careful in the future about the trophy projects, the things, the beauty parades, the things that you do because they're good for your portfolio. You need to be really careful about that and make sure you've got a good balance between the right clients and the right level of profitability. And of course, when you're thinking about that, you're more likely to find as well that some of your existing clients don't make the cut in terms of win-win profitability and longevity. So really, you'll need to be bold, not immediately, but you really need to be bold in starting to think about whether the clients you've got now are going to be the clients that will serve you well in the future. And then the last thought, which again is a fundamental area around the client point, which is, is this question of positioning and communication. We look at an awful lot of agency positionings, both for our clients and obviously for their competitors when we're going through that route. But we always start with we start with the client perspective, and I'd invite you to do that as well in rethinking your own positioning and your own communications. So much of agency positioning has become very inward-looking, either looking about how you as a team feel about your positioning, or how you and your team feel about how you sit relative to the competitors that you think you're up against. But the reality is that positioning is about communicating to your target clients the work you can and want to do for them. And rarely is that done very well. So there's lots of gloss, there's lots of nice words, lots of emotion, but not a lot of clarity from a client perspective as to what they can buy from you and what you're really good at. So if you just simply ask your question in terms of your communicating your positioning, does it really tell a client how you can help them, what you can help them achieve? And if it doesn't, then let's just simplify, let's cut out the gloss, let's cut back, and let's get really clear in terms of the benefit that we can deliver for clients. And there's a great comparison. If most people, when they go through a sort of positioning exercise, will come to a brand idea for their own organization, and sadly they'll often try applying the same processes that they use for clients to their own agencies, and it just doesn't work like that. One of the strengths should be in agency terms is to keep things really simple and to get to a good place that makes you easy to buy. So it's a very simple concept. You'll all have in your positioning work thought about what's the elevator pitch, and it's a very old-fashioned concept, but if you reflect back on that, there's simple words in there, and there's simple meaningful words describing what's going on. And even though you may have a very fancy brand idea, you may have some superbly written copy around it, I bet you when asked that elevator question, most of your team revert to something more simple, and that's going to be the best way to go in the future. So some real fundamental changes and big opportunities to come in the future if we press on with that. So that's a view of clients, a number of things in there, but hopefully I've given you a structure that will enable you to think your way through that in a more sensible way than you might have done when you just thought, what are the issues that we need to think about. Let's look at talent now, the second area. Again, we've highlighted sort of 3 areas that you might choose to think about as a useful way to get into things, and some thoughts about the expectations. Well, most talent, and particularly the top talent, is going to want choice and flexibility. They're going to want choice in terms of how they work, how long they work, where they work, and importantly, they're going to want choice and flexibility in who they work for. And even if you've got had very loyal staff and you've got good contractors or freelancers or good relationships with partners, don't believe that that's going to happen. A number of agencies, a number of our clients actually, we're already on the journey to identify top talent in competitor agencies. We're already on journey to look at top freelancers, top contractors, and make very special offers to those people for the future. So that choice and flexibility of talent is going to be a threat, whichever way you're coming at it. And the other 2 points really is that talent is going to want to measure their progression and achieve that they're progressing on their terms. So that doesn't mean moving up the ladder, being promoted in traditional ways. It might mean different experiences, different skills. And there's a real question there as to whether your structures, your processes, your ways of assessing people, the ways of rewarding people even are going to be appropriate for what's going to be needed in the future. And we talk again at the last point there about shared beliefs, and that's not just, do we have values and ethos that people like? It's, do we actually believe in them? Does the organisation reflect them? Do we really believe in the management of the organisation and its ability to deliver what we as individuals want for the future? So we come down that line and just think about what those expectations mean for the standards we need to achieve. So purpose-driven decisions. People want to be really clear about what the ambition of the organisation is, what the senior team believe in, and that's not just a little PowerPoint that sits on the server somewhere. That's something that needs to be enacted in everyday decisions. They need to know how the organisation wants to believe and what place it wants to take in the world. And if you haven't got clarity on that, or you've got clarity but you're not acting it, then you need to get your act together on that. And the second point is many agencies have a strong manager or a strong couple of managers, but talent's now going to look more broadly than that. They're going to look at the whole management team. Are they strong? Are they open? Do they act in a consistent way? And certainly with our clients as part of this new process, then certainly we're engaged in quite a lot of management development, management team development, so that management team is able to act in a much more efficient and compelling way in terms of attracting and retaining the interest of talent. And then roles and responsibilities. Don't be seduced completely in terms of thinking that you should spend all your time just thinking about what your team want or what your future team will need and how you can do everything for them. Of course, you should be very sensitive to them and very committed to your people, but you've got to try and find the right balance between what the team are doing, what they want to do, and how that can contribute to your future success. So you need to look at the roles, capabilities, and think about whether there are better ways of organising your teams, better structures, better roles, better ways of working. You want the best people, of course you will, and you need to be pretty honest about whether the people you've got really are the best. Not because you're going to make them all redundant tomorrow, but because you're then going to have a process either to develop them or to replace and change people over time. But the other point is really about value creation. You need to find this nice balance between the roles that motivate people and enables them to feel productive, feel motivated, feel engaged with the organisation. But that needs to match with value creation as well. And so there's a nice exercise to do to match the roles that you've got people in with the value that they've created for the organisation. And often when you do that simple comparison, you'll find that you've got quite a few, perhaps more senior people as well, where they're in senior roles, they're quite expensive to drive the organisation, but the actual value that they're creating is quite low. And you need to be bold enough to change that. And of course, in terms of the culture, we need a culture. You'll need cultures that are fast-moving, flexible, adaptable to changes in markets, changes from clients. but also you want people that are empowered, people that feel they can take those decisions and get on with things. And of course, you'll need to develop those people and have the structures in place to develop that capability. A lot of work going on, particularly in terms of recognition and around the issues of reward. You've been through, most of you will have been through those stages of furloughing or asking your staff to take reductions in salaries, or looking at different ways of paying them. And the right thing to do is to consider how you want to do that in the future. Is it the right thing to return people to, you know, normal 100% salary that they were having before? Is that what they really want? Are there different ways of rewarding people? Can we look at new schemes, radically different things? And we've got a couple of programs running at the moment where we are looking at different levels, and where you know, perhaps with some of the team having taken salary reductions to 80% or 60% of their normal salary, might not return to normal salaries, but might take those benefits in different ways. And that's a sort of mutual collaborative design of a future reward system. So good things there from talent. Talent want to go forward and they want to be involved in the business. They want to be invested in both emotionally and financially in your organization. And for example, why shouldn't everybody in the organization become a shareholder or a stakeholder in some shape or form? If that's right for you, be bold and think about it. And the last one is obviously value. And some of you may be thinking that this automatically means just looking at the owners, the existing owners, or the prospective owners if you're thinking of selling the organization in the future. But it's not really, because the organization being profitable, having value, growing is a fundamental concern now to all stakeholders, whether they're your employees, your partners, or other people. And unless you get this value right, you won't deliver the resilience that those people need. So there's not this trade-off, which as often people have felt existed in the past, between, you know, doing great work and being profitable and being valued. There's that shouldn't be a difficult trade-off, because ultimately everybody wants their organization to prosper and be successful. But let's deal with some of these and be quite hard-nosed about them, because I think that's what you need to be. For too long, many organizations have been post-rationalizing to themselves why they're lower than average, or they're lower than acceptable profit margins are okay. And you know, anybody that's come into the recent crisis with the idea that their profit margins are low, but they'll grow their way out of it, will have suffered much more significantly than other people who had a much higher starting point for their profit margins. So profit margins have been too low, and we've seen for the last couple of years the top 40 by size independent agencies in the UK, yeah, only about 40% of them manage a profit margin above 10%, and that's a level that's much too low. You need to be aiming for 20% plus. And you need to have an upside potential on the 20%, and you need to have a clear way of managing a downside result if your revenues fall lower than that. And so when you're setting your margins and thinking about where you should go in the future, don't say, for example, well, you know, we have been earning 10%, but we'll go through this revamp of our organization and be brilliant if we can get to 12 or 14. Don't do that. If you're going to go through a revamp of your organization, set your margins high and go for it, and find the ways to restructure your organization, your products, your offers, your pricing to get to that level. Don't make compromises in this area, or else you will waste the crisis and won't end up being a winner in the future. Growth, we need to deliver it, not just because it's good for the value of the business, but your people want new opportunities, you'll want to bring in fresh talent, and you'll want to make that a part of a vibrant organization. But let's accept the need to plan that better. It's not just a spreadsheet with done by the finance team with a few calculations in it. There should be a good 3 to 5 year plan with good understanding of product, services, team structures, ways of working, and the roadmap that's going to get you there. Because otherwise, you haven't got a proper plan. You've just got a piece of guesswork or a wish list, which is a different game altogether. And then much more attention to business quality, which will give you the resilience. And as I said before, anybody that's thinking of selling their agency or hoping to sell their agency, which probably is a bigger wish list than it was 3 or 4 months ago, these last factors are going to be the perhaps most important factors to be on top of after having profit and growth, which is market positioning. How distinctive are you? Have you got a good place in the market? Have you got distinctive products? Have you got IP around any of your processes or products? Have you got good staff retention? Have you got staff loyalty? Have you got a management team? Have you got management succession in place? All those issues. And have you got a really good management information system and a good way of managing risk in the future? So a holistic view of value, not just a view of we made some good numbers in the last couple of years, so we must be very, very valuable, because that was never true. And certainly as we go forward in the future, it'll be even less true. So there's many challenges now in terms of creating value. So take a view of that. I've gone through quite a lot of points quite quickly there, but the point I'd like to make in terms of going back to the need to look at these 3 things on a collective basis. Because if you try to look at things in isolation, I said before, you won't get to the right answer. The product and the offer that you choose and think are right for yourselves and the clients you choose will affect the talent that you need to deliver that. And the combination of those clients and talents will affect the value. If you don't get that combination of clients and talents right, you won't be able to achieve the profitability and growth that you want. So these 3 areas need to be intermingled and to made to work in a collective way. You can't just do one and then move on to the next one and move back. And certainly with our client experience, we've been round this circle a few times in order to get the right balance between all those 3. So I hope that I've given you some food for thought in that. There's some useful ideas that we have put on the table for you, or some useful structures to think about things. And perhaps just one last slide just to give you another view of how you might go about thinking about these things. And it's a summary of a bit of the way that we work in this area. And so, again, a simple process, again, following the simplicity argument. I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but if we take the first one, let's frame and clarify what we're trying to do. And perhaps the most significant thing I can say to you is start by understanding the new world of client expectations and value, and think about what is going to be expected of you as an organization. Don't start with where you are today and think about how you can make it a bit better, because that won't give you the sort of bold leaps that you need. So start with the expectations, think about what the organization will need to be in the future, think about how you want your agency to be in order to be able to deliver on those expectations. Then look at the gaps with your business, and then think about what your objectives are and what the priority areas to change will be for the future. So start with the expectations and work backwards. Then in stage 2, explore your options. How could you change the organization? How could you change the structure? What does it mean for people? How should people work? What should their roles be? Which clients can give us that best value? All those things we talked about this morning. Look at those and then think, what are the priority areas? What's going to make the biggest impact of our organization? You can't do everything at once. So let's sort of look at prioritizing the things that are going to make the most difference, and then go on to that last category of shaping a plan with stages. You can't do all this tomorrow. You're not going to be a completely different organization in a couple of months' time. It's going to take a bit longer than that, but it'll be a lot easier if you know where you're going. So all the normal things on that right-hand area of testing, tracking, and measuring. And so if that's again, hopefully a useful prompt in where you might get to on things. And a quick thought on just the thought on how we as Tonic can work. So one level, simple level, insightful mentoring. We'll just help you through that process. We'll share all our ideas and thoughts, and we'll just guide you. You do most of the work. We'll just be there as the spirit to keep you on track and make sure you get results. And the second thought is where more deeper level of working, where we can become a hands-on partner for you. So those are some thoughts which we can explore in a bit more detail. So Leanna, back to you to head us off into the questions.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Ian. And thanks everyone for listening through that as well. I mean, hopefully it has reinforced some of what you were thinking anyway, provoked some new ways of looking at particular challenges. And with that in mind, I'd love to open the floor at this point. Got 10 minutes or so to kind of work through any questions that some of you may have. So either, I guess, shout out or a show of hands if we want to be British about it. But if anyone's got a burning question, please share. No? All right. Very quiet on this Thursday morning. Let me remember the day of the week, because I wasn't very good at that up front. Thought it was Tuesday. We did have a couple of questions in advance, so thank you for those. One of them, if I just read it out here, one of the biggest strengths we have is our culture, and this situation has had a detrimental effect. Obviously, we've been through a process of furloughing and redundancies, and we're now thinking about how to piece the team back together and rebuild our culture. Ian, I can sort of touch on this one. It's a very good question, and I think actually there's some interesting words used in there in terms of piece back together and rebuild. Not the first to ask us that question. I think when we talk about culture, we think this is an opportunity to think about it slightly differently. It's not necessarily a return to anything or a rebuild. We see it as an opportunity to relaunch, in many ways, your culture, reboard people actually. You know, we used to sort of using the term onboarding, but actually we're in a situation where, based on the dynamics, I guess we've all been working sort of remotely. Some people are starting to go back to the office. So what's that going to mean for how people work together and sort of feel like a sort of connected, unified team again? So there's an opportunity here, I think, to have everyone feel like they're reboarding into a new era. And that means being really clear. If you have a purpose already, great, but look at that in the context of what's just happened, in the context of, I guess, everything we've been sharing today, but where do we want to go as an organization? Is that purpose that we have still fit for purpose? Literally. If you don't have one, of course, it's an opportunity to start saying, well, what are we in this for? Where are we going? And start providing that vision, because even though, yes, we need to think about the short term, we need to be careful, we also need to set some sort of inspiration and some vision for people and sort of draw them towards it. I guess the same is true for values. So most organizations will have them, but do they need to be reset, rethought in any way? I'm using the re-word, which I said, you know, there's too much of it around at the moment, but in the context of the future, are they going to work really hard for you? And where, I guess we think in symbols as well. So where does your culture need to show up? Are there some new symbols that you can think about that will happen from day one, whether that be reframing the role of the office, the value of when people come together, how are we going to collaborate, whether that's looking at your sort of support program for learning and progression. Does that need to move more digitally? Rewards, recognitions, we've touched on a few things today, but having 2 or 3 key symbols in place for your culture when you bring people back, I think will really help just to sort of instill that sense of confidence and focus on the future as well. So thank you for that question. We would always say culture's a superpower, and I think that never more so than now. It couldn't really be more important to reconnect people with, but actually maybe to create a new sense of culture as well. All right. We have a question in the chat box. Jodie. So most agencies have thrown out their financial plans for this year and are focusing by quarter. When should they start planning for 2021 and beyond, and how when so much uncertainty? Thank you for that. Ian, do you want to take that question?
Well, I think the depends what you mean exactly by planning in terms of that question, but my simple answer to that is we should be planning now. There's questions of how quickly, if you're asking yourself how quickly are things likely to come back, my challenge to that is, well, most agencies never really knew what the future was going to be anyway, because forward workloads and predictions were always quite difficult. So the planning for the next 2 or 3 years ought to be going on now, and stage by stage in the next few months. And certainly the guiding thought is, if you're not sure things are going to increase significantly, then plan on the basis that they won't, and build your structures, build your teams, build a structure that you can be confident that you can be successful, create a platform for the future based on what you actually think will happen in the current guises. And we've got, as I said, our clients, we've got some clients who have been fortunately completely unaffected. We've got one client who we're talking to after this call, who are probably about 15-20% ahead of where they expected it to be over the last 3 or 4 months. There's other organizations that have probably been down to 30% of revenue, and they're currently replanning. We're working with them to replan to be working on an agency revenue level that is perhaps 60 or 70% of what it was last year or in the previous quarter. So you need to be planning now, not just sitting on your hands waiting for things to get back to normal, because that won't happen. And inevitably you'll be making decisions now, and the danger is that if you make decisions, for example, on as we're coming out of furloughing, there are a lot of valid questions about structures, redundancies, teams. If you try to make those decisions without a really good understanding of what your future plan is, you'll make the wrong decisions. People who may seem most obvious, people at the margin of your organization who you think could leave now and that'll be fine. If you rethought your offer, rethought your structures, you might find those people are actually important for the future, and there's other people that you don't want. So you need to get on with the plan and then adapt it as to the current experience that you find month to month. Okay.
Can I put a question forward? I don't know if you're hearing me. All right, cool.
Hi.
Really interesting. So enjoyed listening to all that. I feel that we've probably got a lot of what you talked about in place, or have had that in place for a while, because we've been going for over 30 years. So I feel confident that most of what you're saying we have in place. Obviously, the changes in the structure of the business are going to be something I need to consider in terms of our revenues are probably half what they used to be, and we're half on furlough and half working. But I feel quite confident a lot of our clients are coming back online now, and we've picked up some new business. So I'm sort of confident about us being able to continue. My bigger concern is in the area of the shape of my business. I own my own offices. I have about 20, well, you've been there, Ian, so you've seen it, 20 spaces there. Most of my tenants are sort of downsizing to one desk when they were 3. And my staff don't really want to come back to work. I mean, London isn't offering what it used to be. I know everybody's trying to sell it up, and I've been up a few times. It's still quite quiet. The office space is not going to be as collaborative as it used to be. The kitchen was a great meeting point for people to sort of have coffee or lunch and prepare, and you're not allowed to use it. The facilities of showers, all that sort of the enjoyment of coming to work is being stripped away, and the ability to work from home people are enjoying. So there's that balance between working from home and coming into work, which is fine, but running an office, you can't run an office like that and pay for it. So my bigger challenge is trying to decide whether or not I change my complete model to become a work from home model and get rid of the office. And talking to a few other agencies, some agencies have already done that. I'm not convinced about that. I'm convinced about work from home model. I was never an advocate for that. But in fact, my staff have been more productive working from home than they are at work. mainly because they're not talking about Netflix all day. But I think that's my biggest challenge. I'm not sure I got anything from this in that arena, but you talked about sharing, and I think that's something that agencies need to do, share their learnings of this and how they're going to go forward. And we're looking for more collaboration with other agencies. So with our space, getting agencies in, so like a digital agency or a copywriting agency, just trying to find forums where we can do that. I'm in Better Bankside, so they've set up, I forgot what it's called, but it's a chat forum using one of the usual forums where we can all discuss and talk. And I'm hoping there's going to be more of that sort of collaboration, and not seeing ourselves as competitors, but maybe working together, because I think a lot of us will downsize, and that's the other difficult decision I've got to make about my team. So I don't know if any of that helps. It's more of questions, but that's where we are.
I won't. We can talk more offline if you want, Simon. But I mean, our experience is I think everybody that all our clients who have flexibility to get out of leases or to downsize their space are taking that option. But our feeling, and that's with we've done a lot of with our clients, we've done a lot of staff surveys and discussions about what they really want, and the balance is somewhere in between. It's not permanent work from home, and of course, so it seems to be a combination of, I mean, if I try to average it out, it's sort of have a place where teams can meet and work on things when they need to. Have places that are flexible workstations for people to come and work if they need somewhere to work that isn't at home. But you don't, the days of people having a desk or a permanent workstation and the company paying for, however many places seems to me to be long gone. We are in a new era, and there are considerable benefits from that. So I think that it's not extreme. It's finding the flexibility somewhere in there. But I think if you've got a big commitment to a lot of office space, that will be a problem. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Actually, just the last point on that, you mentioned community. I do think that's a really good example that you've raised of where community will come through more and more. There are agencies talking about that sort of, what's the company we want to keep? What are the best combinations? But also just the sharing element. So to your point, hearing how other companies have made those decisions, what they've chosen to do, how they've chosen to do it. So I think the more the industry can keep sharing and learning from each other, the better in that respect.
Yeah. I think community is an interesting one, because in terms of community, I tend to use that with clients and their impact on community, whereas within the agency arena, and for this, we've got architects that share the space with us and space planners. It's collaboration. So I think that there's that extra word you'd said, that we could be flexible with what you've put in as your remit, but collaboration is the thing. And it still never ceases to amaze me, the number of agencies that I reach out to that say, oh no, we'd rather work with that client direct. I had one recently where we had a huge project to pitch, and it's copywriting side of it we just don't do, and approached an agency that does design and copywriting, and they weren't invited. I didn't tell them the budget, so they've just turned down 30 grand's worth of copywriting, but they didn't want to collaborate. And I just cannot see that as the way forward in the new normal. It's going to be about collaboration and finding agencies that you can work with together to share ideas and trust each other. And obviously, trust comes with time. But we do find those agencies, and those that were sharing space with us, had started to collaborate on workspace environments, which was really good. Yeah. So it's just finding that.
It's the win-win, as we say. And on that note, thank you, Simon, for those comments. If there are no other questions, by the way, just on the chat box, great. Thank you, Joe and Emily, and good luck with the planning. I'm glad that it's been useful, but also the reset and the refresh that you're going to go through. Best of luck with that as well. But thank you, everyone. We're at time. I'm going to be respectful of your time. For anyone who wants to stay on, wants to chat more, we're happy to. If not, we can pick up those conversations afterwards as well. But thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks very much.